Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim. Today we continue with our series on understanding the short surahs of the Quran. So by way of revision, let's start off with Idha Zulzila, which was one that we had done about 2 sessions ago. But I think I want to just mention one particular story. So if you look at this particular surah, إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا, it talks about the trembling of the earth in a very violent sort of shaking at the end of time. And at that point, what's going to happen is the earth is going to take out all its burdens and all its weight and everything that was embedded in it. And man is going to be wondering what's going on here. I mean, they haven't seen, or we will not have seen anything like it before, which is, like a simultaneous earthquake and hurricane and whatever, all the natural disasters you can think of are going to happen all in one time. So what man is going to say, what is going on with her? And Allah is going to empower the earth to actually talk about what it has embedded in terms of secrets. In other words, who has walked on what piece of ground, who did this action in this place, at which time, etc. So it carries on, and on that day, man is going to be separated into different groups, and they're going to see their deeds. فَمَن يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ, that whoever does even an atom's weight of good is going to see it, and whoever has done an atom's weight of evil will also see it. Now, one story comes to mind, which I didn't mention the last time, was Imam Abu Hanifa, one of the famous 4 jurists in the Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. He, on one occasion, read this particular surah in an Isha Salah in a mosque, and he cried so profusely after reading it in that Salah and even after the Salah, that to such an extent that the people in the congregation even dispersed after the Salah, but he remained seated in that position and he continued weeping. Then the Haris, the guard of that particular mosque, came to lock up, and he saw this person in deep contemplation and crying. So he decided, you know what, I'm not going to wait for him, I'd rather carry on. He locked the doors and he carried on. And then in the early hours of the morning before Fajr, he came back to open the door, and he found, lo and behold, Imam Abu Hanifa in the same posture, in the same place, still crying about this particular surah. Now, obviously, what makes a person cry when you read this kind of a surah is essentially those last 2 verses that talks about the day of accountability in such a rigorous and fine-tuned kind of way that every mustard seed or grain of sand weight or even an atom's weight of good, me and you are going to see our deeds in that way, and whatever evil of that sort of same magnitude we have done in our lives, we also going to see it. So may Allah guide us to also understand the true impact of this particular surah, and the fact that when you read it, it's actually supposed to send shivers down your spine, because it makes you aware of the fact that one day is one day, and that day is certain, and that me and you are all going to be held accountable for every single deed, every single thought, every single intention that we did in this world for whichever number of years we have lived. And this particular theme actually carries on into the next 3 surahs as well. If you look at Wal Adiyat, they talk about a battlefield sort of scenario in the first 5 verses, where he's talking of these female horses that charge in a very sort of methodical but very brave kind of way in the midst of an enemy. They strike their hooves on the rocks, and it causes a bit of sparks. They do this raid in the broad daylight, and they raise a trail of dust in the desert sands as they move, and they go right in the heart of the enemy. Now, that description appeals to an Arab mind who likes fast horses and the idea of battlefield. But what's the message in this particular surah? It goes on in line 6 to say, Innal insana li rabbihi lakanud. So, although horses are under man's command in terms of an army raid, But when you look at man generally, he doesn't show the gratitude that he should show to his Lord. That's the first 6. Then, وَإِنَّهُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ لَشَهِيدٌ, and surely he himself, that is man himself, is going to be witness to that fact about his ingratitude. And line 8 says, وَإِنَّهُ لِحُبِّ الْخَيْرِ لَشَدِيدٌ, that indeed his love for wealth is so avid or so great or so overpowering or so consuming to him. And with that, he has amassed so much of wealth while he was in this short span of life on this earth. Then the question is asked, أَفَلَا يَعْلَمُ إِذَا بُؤْثِرَ مَا فِي الْقُبُورِ, so does he not consider, or does he not know, that one day all these graves are going to be turned over, and you, as well as what you have done and achieved in this world, is also going to be turned upside down, and you're going to be brought to this day of reckoning. وَحُصِّلَ مَا فِي الصُّدُورِ, and what is in your breasts, deep down, the secrets that you've been hiding will now come out in the open. إِنَّ رَبَّهُمْ بِهِمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ لَخَبِيرٌ, surely your Lord that day will be the best aware, the most knowing of everything that has happened on this earth, and you'll have no place to hide, and me myself as well. So this one also reinforces this idea of accountability on that day, and that we need to be showing hamd and gratitude, as is mentioned in verse 6, and that one day our graves are going to be turned upside down and we will be held to account. And this kind of theme continues even in Al-Qariya. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Al-Qariya, Al-Qariya talks about this catastrophic event, or the day of the rattling, or the day when things are going to be topsy-turvy, things are going to be strange, as if it never happened before. So it describes that day. It says, that day when mankind will be like scattered moths. So we're going to be light in weight, almost like an insect that has no real value. And we're going to be scattered in the sense that we're going to be moving from here to there and not knowing where to go, because every single human being is going to be lifted up on that day and be one sort of symbol of a simple moth moving aimlessly and worried about what's happening to itself. On that day as well, the mountains will be like carded wool. So these mountains that are solid bedrock today as we know it, of all colors and shades, that particular mountain of rock is going to be lifted up, made into something that's very light, almost feathery, and almost like wool, like fibers of wool. And it will be of wool of different colors, because there's different colors of rocks. And this wool is going to be like how wool is normally manufactured, where the wool is taken and then hit to such an extent that strands are taken out of it and wool is made out of it. And that's the way the mountains are also going to be made, literally pounded to ashes and to dust. And this dust is going to rise, and it's going to be colorful display of all colors in the atmosphere. And then it goes on, as for him whose deeds weigh heavily in the scales, right? So this mawazin is to do our scales of deeds. He will have a pleasing life if he's a heavy weight. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ, and as for those whose scales are going to be very light in weight, for أُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ, his home is going to be in the abyss of the fire. In other words, it's going to be like the womb of the mother, and keeping that person or that individual or that soul to stay in that particular container, the womb, and that is going to be the fire of hell. And what will show you what it is, or what will make you consider or even think of what this particular thing is, this abyss? It talks of narun hamia, a scorching fire, a fire to the degree that we can never imagine, at least 70 times worse than any fire that we have experienced in this world. Then we move on to Al Takaathur, and I think I've covered this halfway, so I just complete this particular surah. It talks about Takaathur, in other words, the idea of amassing the goods of this world, where there's rivalry going on between people, that I've got so much, someone else wants to get more than me, or always aspiring to reach one who is more wealthy than the person actually is. So this is al-ha. Al-ha is to distract you. So this rivalry to amass the goods of this world has actually distracted you. And till when? It says, Hatta zurutumul maqabir. And this thing is going to stop only when you visit the graves. Now, the word ziyara or zara is to visit for a short while. We're not going to be living in the graves forever. This is going to be a short sojourn linking this world to the hereafter. And so once we reach the graves, that is the only time when this amassing of wealth is going to actually stop. Then it says, Kalla sawfa ta'lamun. No, indeed you will know. Thumma kalla sawfa ta'lamun. And again, soon you will know. So it's a double emphasis and almost triple emphasis going on here about you will come to know what this thing is about. Kalla law ta'lamuna ilm al-yaqeen. Kalla is no, indeed. Again, the third time, it's emphasizing the fact that you will know with the certainty of knowledge. لَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمِ. You will see this fire with your own eyes, as it were. ثُمَّ لَتَرَوُنَّهَا عَيْنَ الْيَقِينِ. Then you will see it with the eye of certainty. And ثُمَّ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمِ. And that day you will be questioned about the na'im. Now, it's quite interesting that the word na'im is used. Na'im is like ni'mah, is a singular form. It means one blessing. And an'um or ni'amat are plural. So this last verse is telling us that you're going to be questioned not about all the benefits and all the ni'mats you're blessed with, but for every single na'im that you are blessed with. Now you can imagine what that kind of accountability is going to be. That for every single little thing. Now, just to go through what we covered the last time, that is, this ilmul yaqeen is just about having the knowledge and experience about something. So in other words, in this day and age, if we see fire, our knowledge tells us from what we know about the way fire works is that fire gives off smoke. And so in other words, if you see smoke, you can actually assume there's a fire that's causing the smoke, even though you don't see it. So this is the first thing. The ilmul yaqeen is to have the knowledge that fire causes smoke. Then as you come closer towards the fire, and you can see it, so the first one was where you were at a distance and you can only see the smoke, so you have the knowledge to assume that there's a fire. Then as you come closer to the fire, you can see it with your eye of certainty. In other words, your eyes don't lie to you, and you can see the fire in front of you. So that is the ainul yaqeen, that is the eye of certainty. And then obviously if you come very, very close to it, you can then feel it as well. In other words, your five senses are now engrossed in what the fire is about. So your sense of touch will be able to tell you that yes, if fire burns, I must stay away from it. But if you had to slip and fall into it, then obviously the net result of that is going to be that your skin will burn, your hair will get singed, and what you'll be left with is your bare bones if you have to actually enter the fire and you get consumed by it. So that is the ultimate where haqqul yaqeen comes about, where you have the sense of certainty without any element of doubt whatsoever, because you have actually experienced it firsthand. Now this surah describes the two stages, the ilmul yaqeen and the ainul yaqeen about the hellfire, which now we can have knowledge about it because the Quran through Revelation has told us about it. And in certain ways we can experience a bit of the fire as we know fire in this world to be and the qualities it has. But finally the haqqul yaqeen is going to be when, after the day of judgment, when people are going to be separated into the good and those who have not been so fortunate to see Jannah, when even those who are going to enter Jannah are going to go past Jahannam, as it were, just at least have a peek into it and then go on into Jannah. So actually when you see it with the eye of that haqqul yaqeen, you're going to realize that yes, I did a good life and alhamdulillah I've been blessed with Jannah now, and I'm very, very pleased that I could avoid this pit, which is a bottomless pit with a fire beyond imagination, and I'm going to have this haqqul yaqeen embedded in my being, as it were, because I'm going to see it firsthand. Just one or two things about this particular thing. If you see this tara, this verb tara, you said tarawunna and la. Now, in other words, this is like a triple emphasis of the verb to see. So the la is one sort of way of emphasizing in Arabic that you will see. Then that ta is there, and then the noon is with a double, the tajdeed on it. In other words, it's pronounced unna, that you're pronouncing the noon 2 times. So that is like almost like a 3 or 4 times emphasizing the fact that you're going to see this Jahim, in terms of just that one word, trying to emphasize the fact that you're going to see it so often. Right? Then it goes on, this thumma and la and then noon again. So here in this particular verse, the second verse that's on the screen at the moment, is showing you at 4 levels of magnification that you're going to see it with the eye of certainty. Right? And that day you're going to be questioned concerning the blessing you have been blessed with. And I think I mentioned this particular incident where one day the Prophet ﷺ, after having actually starved for a few days, was desperately in need of any food. So he went days without food, and in that condition, Abu Bakr came, and he could see on Abu Bakr's face as well that he was also starving, just like the Prophet himself was. And Umar followed shortly thereafter, and all 3 were in the same condition. And on that day, the Prophet ﷺ went to a Sahabi's house. He knocked on the door once, and he greeted, Assalamu alaikum. There was no reply. He greeted the second time, and on the third time, just about when they were about to leave, a Sahabiya, the wife of the Sahabi, came. She answered the door and she said, what, we were here, we were just wanting you, the Prophet ﷺ, to convey the salam on this household on 3 occasions. So we were waiting for you to repeat it, just so that we could hear the salam and the blessing that you will bring to us. In any case, they gave him on that occasion a little bit of dates and some water to drink. And before the Prophet and his 2 close companions Sallallahu actually partook of it, the Prophet Sallallahu reminded Abu Bakr and Umar on that day that this is one na'im that you're going to be asked a question about. Now, it makes you think that, on a desperate day when you have barely the last like one morsel of food to eat, if that is one na'im, then you can extrapolate and think that, when we sit down at a table to eat, how many na'ims don't we have just on one table? We have platterfuls of good food, a variety of food, a variety of drinks, and all that is, each one of it will be a na'im, on a na'im, on a na'im, and we will then be, like this verse is saying, on that day you will be questioned about every single morsel of food and every gulp of water or whatever else you have drunk as a na'im that you'll be answerable for. So, on this thing as well, it's a case of, one of the du'as that the Prophet used to make very often is, Oh Allah, keep me in the company of the poor and resurrect me in the company of the poor. And one of the reasons for that dua is the fact that this na'im that you're going to be, or all of us are blessed with, when you are in a poor condition, you have less na'im, less ni'mat to actually, as it were, thank Allah for. Whereas when you are really blessed and endowed and you have a lot of, you are going to have that more difficult reckoning on the day of judgment. So we need to just be aware of the fact that we use all the na'ims very, very efficiently, don't waste it, give charity as much as possible, and also when we eat, don't eat to your full, so that you keep your 1/3 full with food, 1/3 with water, and 1/3 empty as a general rule, which is a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, so this surah is about the distraction, the Al-Hakumut Takaathur, that plentiness or plentifulness has actually distracted you. And the next surah we're going to cover is about time. Now this surah is, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Wal Asr, Innal insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat, wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Now, these are just 3 short verses. Wal Asr is a verse on its own, which is the oath. You can see the word coming in there again. And Al Asr is to do with time, or the movement of time, or the advent of time, or how time moves over the ages, or how history passes us by, all to do with, capsules of time, whether time is in a minute, or in a day, or in an hour, or in maybe a decade, or centuries, or even epochs of time. All this is captured in this Wal Asr, this concept of Wal Asr. Then it goes on, Innal insana lafi khusr, surely man or humankind is certainly lafi, very definitely in khusr. Khusr is a state of loss. And then it goes on and it makes 4 exceptions, that who is not in loss is only those that are illal, except those who are amanu, they have iman, they have faith, wa amilus salihat, that they do good deeds, and they continue, it says, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, and they encourage each other with haqq, which is the truth and what is the right, and وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, and they enjoin one another to patience. So basically these were 3 verses revealed in Makkah. It opens with the divine oath, swearing by the approach of time, or as time goes by, that humankind will be in absolute loss of everything except for 4 things. Your faith will never let you down. Your good deeds that you've done will never let you down. And the fact that you exhorted or encouraged each other in your communities to stand by what is truth and to stand by what is patient and persevere with whatever is meted out to you in life. If you have these 4 qualities, these are the people that won't be in this loss that is being described. So the surah shows the way to salvation. It's the image of a declining day, suggests that stage of the day when people want to, there's a final hustle and bustle of the day before night falls. So people want to get things done before the end of the day. And it's indicative of the very short time that's left before darkness sets in and your opportunity is going to be lost forever. So Al Asar can mean many things. It can mean the afternoon or late afternoon time, the decline of time or the declining day, the epoch or the whole, if you look at centuries put together of people in history, or the late afternoon or time in ages as it goes past, or time through the ages. Now in order to understand this one, Ustad Noman does a 5-hour commentary on this particular surah. It's one of the shortest, but one of the most significant in terms of its depth of meaning. And I'm just going to touch on some of these things that he's talked about in his explanation to the surah. And obviously, please listen to his original as well, because I'm just giving you a 20-minute summary of what is 5 hours of absolute gem of an explanation. The first concept he talks of is, what is success and what is survival? Now, if you look at, say, if you're working for a company and you've worked a number of years in that particular company, and now in your mind you think it's time for some sort of, improvement, and, sort of your boss, you must go to your boss and say, what, can you consider me for some improvement in my salary? So before you can even go there, what happens is a fire breaks out in that same building that you are in, the company you are working for. And suddenly, what goes through your mind? Will you still go and knock on your boss's door and ask for that raise? Or are you suddenly going to become in a survival mode, and that is scream or shout out, fire, fire, and get everybody to evacuate the building and everybody to save their lives, and you're included, you'll run out and try and save yourself first. So this is to do with basically what this surah is telling us. It's about a survival mode or the state of emergency that Allah is telling us to be in, because time is running out and you need to have that sense of urgency in your life as well. And the sense of urgency to do what? And that's what's explained in the next few verses. Then he talks of another difference. He talks of what do we regard as success, which is the opposite of loss, and failure. Now this idea of success and loss, if you talk to people generally, everybody looks around us and we look at other people's, perhaps the houses they live in, or the cars they drive, or the jobs they have, or the status they have in society, or the fact that they've got a nice title either before their name like doctor, or after their name with a whole lot of string of degrees. And so there's different kinds of statuses that we have, or that we look around in our communities and in our societies, and we regard those to be criteria for success. And on the other side, if we look at that poor homeless person, or the beggar that's standing on the street corner with that little empty cup in his hand, or that person sleeping under a bridge overnight in the coldness of the winter, or the person who's, again, maybe on a wheelchair and begging, where we have to look at them and we say, are those now examples of successes or failures? Now, unfortunately, we will look upon, if you have to compare a homeless person with somebody who's living in a good house, we look at the guy who's living in a good house as an epitome of success, and the one who unfortunately didn't make it, who is forced to live under the bridge, who doesn't have a roof over his head, as a failure. So this is what we look at in worldly terms as what is success and what is failure. And Allah in this surah is going to tilt our thinking to be that when He says, Innal insana lafi khusr, that man is in a loss or in a state of loss, and who is Allah regarding as the successful ones? He's not talking of the one who's got the big mansion or the big castle or the big fancy car or the big status in life, or owns a big company or a multinational corporation, whatever. He says all people are going to be in a loss except those who have, and he's talked of 4 criteria. Just have Iman, follow it up with good deeds, encourage each other to stand by what is haqq or truth, and encourage each other to be patient whenever a calamity befalls you. So this is, in terms of Allah's definition of success, what is success. Now, if you look at historical examples, again, if you look at Pharaoh, he had perhaps the best palace on the banks of the River Nile, with the best views of the River Nile as well in Egypt, having a multitude of slaves doing everything from his garden to riding his conveyance to take him from where to where, and buying things. He had the best sort of lifestyle in terms of the palace of Pharaoh. But the question in the Quran is, was he a success? And the answer we know is definitely not. Likewise, one of his advisors, Qarun, was so wealthy that he had hordes and hordes of treasures, all locked up behind, gates that had keys with locks and the keys were so heavy that they used to have a small regiment of group of slaves to actually carry just the keys to the hordes of treasure that he had. So in other words, he was flowing in wealth, swimming in it, literally. Now again, what did his wealth help him in any way? The answer is no. When he died, obviously that whole wealth was, in fact, had disappeared. No one knows where that wealth is. And even his followers that were envious of him and his wealth, no one could actually get it, because Allah made it such that when he died, his wealth also had disappeared or was never to be found once again. Then if you look at the Prophet's lives, if you look at Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was born an orphan, thrown out of Mecca, his birthplace. So he was made literally as a refugee. He undertook a hijrah, he went to Medina. And so here's a homeless person of another sort, going to another city as a refugee, setting up life afresh in a new city where he was at least welcomed. And then he made a go of it, and obviously the first Islamic state was established in Medina. So you can see, the criteria of success is being sort of hammered to us in the Seerah as well as in the Quran with all these stories, to say, look at the stories of the prophets and look at the stories of those who are abject failures, and let that remind you that don't chase what is artificial and what is not everlasting and what looks like a mirage, but do what the prophets have done. If you look at Ibrahim alayhi salam as well, his father was Azar, that idol maker and idol manufacturer and idol seller. He was also, when Ibrahim alayhi salam preached the idea of Tawheed even to his own father, the father told him, you either obey me, live by my rules in this house, otherwise I kick you out. And that is exactly what he did. He kicked Ibrahim alayhi salam out of his house, all because there was a difference between shirk, polytheism, and Tawheed on the other side, which Ibrahim was a proponent of. And Ibrahim then left his house and he settled in other parts of Palestine, later on in around Mecca. And then we know the life of Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam. So all in all, we know of people that have been successes in the way the Quran deems success to be. And we know through the Quran as well of people who were failures, and how the Quran dealt with them, and how the fact that they were nowhere, and they will obviously be failures not only in this world but also in the hereafter. Then the other image he talks of is, imagine you one day, thrown off a boat that you were sort of moving in, and it so happens that in the process of falling into this water, you also become like kind of semi-unconscious. So as you're going into this water with half your mind sort of alert, and you're kind of drowning, but at the same time you realize that, I got to do everything possible in order to stay afloat. So you push your legs and your hands and you try and, push yourself up against the force of the water that's pushing you down. And as you get to the top, you're happy to be on the top to at least breathe a few times and take a few gasps. But as you realize that now you've been saved, you then realize that, actually your leg happens to be tied to another person who's also drowning, and that person is below you, and he's like kind of pulling you down. So what you have to do is not only save yourself, but you need to try and untie this leg of yours, or try and assist that other person that's also drowning next to you, and both of you have to actually, as it were, make it up and then survive. Now this is what the surah is like kind of telling us, that time is against you, against us all, even at this point in our lives. The time is like running out. The hourglass is, that grains of sand are falling through at a fast pace, and there's very little grains left of our lives that we need to do something about. And before we go into total loss, they're giving you a recipe for your success, and that is, get your faith in order, do good deeds, and encourage each other with patience and with haqq. Now, this thing is quite ironical, because sometimes in our households, we've got a beautiful picture frame of Al Asar on our walls, and under it sometimes is a TV. And, it's unfortunate that we spend like so many hours in front of the TV or the PlayStation or something that distracts us for so many hours. And the writing on the wall in that ayahs that we've got in our frame is telling us that by time man is going to be at a loss, and if you don't wake up and do something now, you'll be in total loss, and your life will be a misery in the year after. So basically the surah is rewiring our thinking. We need to think of life in a different way and appreciate what we have. Right, so this surah is kind of, in terms of a sequence, very well placed, because the surah before talked about takaathur, in other words, man's ability to want to get more and acquire more and amass more. So we are deluded by the acquisitions and the possessions we have, and that day will be questioned about those favors. And in this particular surah, also the central theme is this about the khusr, which is in green, the loss that man is going to be. And that our salvation depends on us doing the 4 actions that are mentioned later down. Now you look at the word khusr. Khusr is one Arabic word where, technically speaking, we are at a loss, but we're not in deep, deep trouble where we cannot get out of it. So khusr is like there's still kind of some hope left for you. Whereas in other places of the Quran, the word khasara is used, where khasara is a degree higher than khusr, which is you've already got one loss, but on it there's another loss or another 2 losses. So that is like loss upon loss. That's the term khasara. And then you have the very incredible loss, which is khusran, which is like a hyperbolized, an empowered noun to show loss of a magnitude that you can't believe. That's incredible loss. And the Quran talks in another verse that the one who loses his dunya as well as his akhirah is in a khusranul mubin, meaning that he is in the ultimate loss, because once you've lost those 2 things, actually you've lost it all. You've lost the plot and you've lost everything that goes with it. Now, sometimes people question that, saying, having wealth, is it a bad thing? The answer is no, it's not actually just in itself a bad thing, but loving it and having an inordinate love that you spend your whole life, day and night, 24/7 in pursuit of it, that is the problem. So when you amass something to the extent that you go overboard, that is the problem potentially. So basically what we need to do is take stock of ourselves and do that now. And every time you read the surah in your salah, and whichever salah you read it in, try and take account. Do a bit of muhasabah, that is self-reflection and self-accounting, to say, how much good have I done? Is it good enough to see me through? Will I make it on that day of judgment when there's this reckoning? The word asir is also juice, so it's almost like, when you take a fruit and you try and squeeze the last ounce out of it, and you get the liquid juice that you use to drink, whether it's wine or olives or anything else that you use. So asr has got that notion of time that you're squeezing out, and what you're going to be left with is your deeds at the end. So the word talks about the oath that you're swearing by, Allah is swearing by time, and time is both the subject and the object in this particular case. And time is going to be a witness against you, because on the day of judgment, we are going to be questioned for that full length of our lives, whether it was 2 years, 10 years, 100 years, whatever. That duration of your life, time is going to be a witness against you to say, you were given so many hours, so many days, so many decades. What did you do with it? Also, if you look at Salatul Asar, Asar is that time of the day when the day is running out. And it's also that salah that is in the middle of, Dhuhr and Maghrib or Isha or the nightfall. So it's the time when we are most busy, in the salah, which very often we lose out of, performing on time as a result of being caught in traffic or leaving work or trying to catch up with some work or an assignment or something to be done just before the day ends. Now, the idea about the other thing, the last two verses, is after you find the truth, you must share it. So this minding your own business, this policy of MYOB is not the way the prophets taught us to do, because when they saw something evil happening or evil being done in the society, they stood up against it. Now, and we need to be like the prophets as well. Now, even Asara has got another connotation of meaning as well, that someone like a young girl who has lost her youthful years is also, they use the word asara to show that this lady or this girl has actually lost the youth part of her age. Now, the Prophet ﷺ was addressed as O Muzammil and O Mudathir. In other words, his message was, you must arise and warn everybody around you. You mustn't just hold the message to yourself. As good as it is, it's not only about your own salvation. You must go out there and give it as a message to others. And this is essentially our role and function as well, that once we have it, once we understand it, once we've learned something about it, we need to go out there, practice it ourselves and preach it, and make that our teaching of it to others as our life's goal and ambition. The word inna is surely or certainly, and it eradicates doubt from anybody's mind. Lafi, that word is also to show extra emphasis that it is surely coming to a loss, and man becomes preoccupied. And then the haqq is truth, when it removes all doubt in your own mind. And a sabr is to give you the strength to hold you back from temptations and to actually do what you have to do. Now, we have to take lessons from the creations of Allah, and we've got many, many lessons of history of people that have lived in past ages. And if we look at our history of the past in the prophets and the different communities that they preached in, and what was the end result of them. So we've got even previous nations that we can go by. And Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned the fact that two things keep man back from sort of enunciating the Tawheed or the oneness of Allah. The one is shubuhat, which is doubts, where he's always have doubts about in his mind as to what he's believing in and where he should stay the cause. And also during life, the devil puts many shahwat or temptations on our path. And if we have to fall for all these temptations one after the other, we can actually lose focus, lose the ihdina sirat al-mustaqim path that we're supposed to be on, and then we are going to be in the state of loss. So the akhirah of us, in akhirah, the main regret is going to be of people that are going to be standing up there saying, I wish I were dust. Law kuntu turaba, in that other verse in Surah, in one of the other surahs in Amma. So today, if you look around us, the marketing, the social media, they always give us, what we need to strive for. In other words, what we need to aspire towards. In other words, they make things aspirational. That good house, that beautiful car, beauty in terms of human beings, that good spouse to aspire to, or to get married to. We always are looking at something we don't have and that we need to aspire to. And so often the marketing that's happened in this is all about materialistic things out there that you can achieve and you can get. It doesn't talk about, get your faith in order, get your ethics, your morality in place. And I think this is what's lacking today, that, and if we have the Iman, that obviously gives us the tranquility and the acceptance of our faith for what it is. And this Amilus Salihat is the fact that we need to do good deeds all the time. And Tawasi, that verb, Tawasa, is, if you look at Wasiya, that other Arabic word, Wasiya means inheritance. Now, normally you would give, when you're reaching an age where you're not going to make it, or you're probably going to die shortly, what you then do is you ensure that you make your wasiyat or your will, and you do that and put that in place. And it's something that you want to leave behind as a legacy of yours, so that your family and the poor and people around you and your societies can actually benefit from what you have acquired and amassed over time. So Tawasi is about you trying to do something good for somebody else. So it could be verbally you giving good advice to somebody else to follow, or even in terms of actions, you encouraging them to do certain things, or if you've got a business and you're giving it over and you're telling whoever is going to take over from you, please look after it this way and do this and avoid that. So you're kind of giving hope to others on the occasion just before you depart. Now, in Surah Hujurat, the Bedouins used to sometimes have Iman, but in terms of their actions, they were still very sometimes uncouth, and they used to, sometimes even address the Prophet as Ya Mahomed. Now, Allah advises those Bedouins at the time to say that you should not address Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in that way. He's not like an equal to you. He's a prophet, a noble Nabi and a Rasul, and you need to give him the sort of the acknowledgement that he desires or he requires. And your deeds will become nullified if you address the Prophet incorrectly. So just in this very small thing, if you just have your address to the Prophet as an incorrect address, you can nullify your good deeds. So we need to be careful that all that we do and we say, we don't talk ill of others, we don't nullify the good that we are doing through backbiting and gossiping and slander and swearing, etc. That we lead good lives, upright lives, so that we are ambassadors for Islam at all times. So the Tawasi idea is to exhort one another to good. If you find somebody going off the track, you try and bring them back. You encourage each other, and you need to do this and have the haqq yourself, and then the sabr that comes with it. And overall, in terms of the entire message of the Quran, they say approximately 2/3 of the Quran is about Iman. This illa alladhina amanu, how to believe, what to believe in, and how to strengthen your belief as well, and how to bring this peace and tranquility in your lives. So basically, Iman has got 3 pillars: the Tawheed part, the Risala part, which is believing in all the prophets, and the final part, which is the life of accountability on the Day of Judgment and the Day of Reckoning. And we need all these 3 elements: the Tawheed, the belief in the prophets and what they came with, the messages, as well as the accountability in the afterlife. Al-Haq is the truth and what is known to be true, and we must have, our conscience must be in agreement to what the truth is. And obviously we need to be very, very sincere in what we believe in. We must also be able to talk truth to power. So sometimes we are in situations where we are sometimes given, say for instance, somebody has died in the family and you are made the person that needs to execute that will in an equitable way. You need to have the taqwa to say, give everybody who is rightfully an heir their share, their correct share, and not do anyone down, even in one iota. Now here it brings to mind one good friend of mine. One day when he passed away, and I happened to attend his memorial service, and he was a good Muslim co-patriot worker with us in the department. On that occasion, I remember one of the persons, narrating accolades about the man and how good he was. He narrates that this person who died, he used to be so sort of serious about the very little sort of pennies and cents, to such an extent that when he was asked to actually sit in one of these family gatherings where he had to be somebody that would apportion the right shares to the right heirs. In any case, he did the calculation and everybody was given their share. And it so happened, days after all this was done and dusted, he then picked up a little mistake in his Excel spreadsheet where a few cents were not apportioned the right way. Now, in Excel, you normally round off things into the nearest rand. And this man found that to be the error. And you won't believe, in a humble way, he went back to all that group of that family members of his, and he said, you know what, I made a mistake. This is actually the number, and there's these few cents that you need to get, and it has to be taken away from somebody else. Now, I was so impressed with this little element of, where you stand by what you believe in, even to the degree where it literally, it's not significant. It's immaterial. And accountants will tell you it's got no bearing on anything. But when you're accountable to that level, then that, will stand you in good stead, because if you lead your life like that, inshallah, the day of reckoning will be very, very easy for you as well, because on that day, Allah will actually account for you on our scales in that way as well, with every little misqala dharratin khayran yara and misqala dharratin sharran yara. So with every atom's weight of good, we're going to also be seeing it. And Allah is going to judge us like that. And we need to ensure that in this world, we judge others by these high standards as well. And it mustn't be like in Wailul lil Mutaffifin, that where when it comes to you receiving things, you demand your last sort of cent that's due to you. And yet when you weigh and you have to give to others, you overlook the part, and there you kind of estimate things and you judge things in a very generalized kind of way, and you don't give what is due to others. And this is even in our businesses, like when you have to weigh something, for instance, somebody comes to buy a fruit or vegetable from your fruit and veg shop, and you are standing at the scale. Would you put the right measure on both sides of the scale and give the person what is rightfully what they're paying for? And this is the same with even the kind of goods we sell in our shops. If we're selling soiled goods, do we tell the customer that's about to buy it that this is soiled in this particular way? It's missing a button here, or it's missing a stitch there. Are we absolutely honest in all our dealings? Because this is the haqq that this surah is talking about, to establish this kind of haqq attitude in our lifestyle, that we do this haqq in everything we do. So in other words, if you are, say, renting a place from somebody else, do you pay your rent on time? Simple thing. Likewise, if somebody is owing you money, will that person pay you on time? That's one thing. And if you are in a very good sort of space and you can actually give or write off that particular loan or debt as an act of charity, do you actually do that? Or do you demand that person pays you that last cent, even to the extent that you prepare to throw that person out of the roof, out of that house that he's renting from you, just because he didn't pay 1 month's rent, or whatever the case is. So each of us know our own situations, what we can do, what we can't do. And this surah is telling us, stand by what is the truth and help each other wherever you can. So if there are people in dire need, like COVID has actually caused this with us as well, in the sense that now we know of lots of people that are sometimes homeless, or they don't have a car because the banks have repossessed their cars because they've lost their jobs, and sometimes they're even unemployed. Do we do these little acts of charity as a way of giving back and saying that, Allah, you have given me na'im upon na'im upon na'im, and I am showing hamd and shukr for all these ni'mats that you've given me by giving back, plowing back and giving back to society in my own way, that whatever I can do. So some of you might be blessed in terms of having the wealth to do it. Some of you might just have the knowledge and the skills where you can maybe offer a lesson or two to an entrepreneur that wants to come up in life. So he's not asking you for your money. He's asking you just for like mentorship, or maybe holding him by his hand and showing him the ropes of this particular business. Can you do at least that kind of good deed, which is mentorship and supporting people? Do that at least. So whatever your capacity to give and to plow back is, you should do whatever you can. So this is what true Iman is about. You must have the courage to speak up, speak truth to power, stand by what is right at all times, and do what is the correct thing to do. And Allah is going to be obviously the judge ultimately. And sometimes when we do this truth and when we uphold the truth, you're going to find challenges in your way where people are going to pull you down, smear your image in society, talk ill of you, have jealousy about what you're doing, maybe even throw you down to the point that they do witchcraft on you. But we shouldn't, fall to all those things. We need to keep upright, keep our heads up high, and do what is right. And that is where this watawasaw bis-sabr as well come in. That when somebody is down and out, you don't kick him further. You actually give him a helping hand to stand up and say, together we're going to do it. As much as you are in need and I can help, I'm going to do that, and together we're going to come up and show that we're going to make things different for both of us. So this idea of being consistent in the path, do whatever you can. It's a tough road. We need to actually do it wherever we can. So this is a very, very heavy surah, very, very short and very, very profound. Imam Shafi was known to have said on one occasion that if Allah only revealed Sura Al Asar, it would have actually been enough for all our salvation. In other words, there's enough in the surah for us to be on the right path, the Sirat al-Mustaqim, and to earn our Jannah, just if we can implement these few pieces of advice in the surah. That is, don't be in a loss, have Iman, do good deeds, encourage each other about truth, and encourage each other about sabr. Now, this ties up with the theme that's running in these last 3 or 4 surahs, as well as the next surah, which is the last one in the series, Al-Humaza, talking about people, what human nature is about, the fact that we try and get so caught up in striving in making our lives and our lifestyles better. We always want to aspire to become richer and better and whatever. Now, while having those things, like we said, is not bad in itself, but when we get too consumed in it and we lose sight and focus of these 4 elements that we should have, that's when it becomes a real problem. Now, the other thing about the surah is, there are a lot of good people, even if you look at who are not Muslims. So if you look at Mother Teresa or Nelson Mandela, or you look at the Arab Spring and those few people that tried to overthrow some of those kings and autocratic rulers that we find in the Arab and Muslim world, there are many good people that do things, sometimes having Iman and sometimes not having Iman. And the good that they do stands out as a testimony to their good, or to their nature and to what they aspired. I mean, even if you look at something like a World Wildlife Fund, people that fight for natural nature as well as the survival of some species or animals. Very, very good causes, although they lack iman, but they are so committed that when somebody wants to sort of burn down a forest, or one conglomeration or one multinational wants to burn a big part, a big chunk of the forest, all because of greed and to start mining of a certain mineral resources in a certain country. These are individuals that stand up and talk about it. They start off a petition to get sort of the common society backing them and trying to ensure that nature is restored and that corporation or multinational or whatever doesn't succeed in, stripping this land bare of that mineral resource that's embedded in that ground, or that animal that's fighting for its own survival. So, as much as there's good in all that, the idea is that we need to take this example, that how is it that sometimes non-Muslims can stand up for what they believe in, and we, as the multitudes we are in terms of the Muslim Ummah, almost numbering almost 2 billion in number, why is it that when it comes to talking up about what is truth and standing by the truth, we are nowhere to be seen, nowhere to be counted, and we allow other people to just do what they want to in life? So this is a message to us to stand up for what is truth and do something in pursuit of it. And may Allah make us of those that actually strive and preach the truth and practice it in our lives, so that we become living, shining examples of what Muslims are and what Muslims should be. The other thing about the surah that even the Sahaba used to do as a practice is that whenever they used to meet and before they used to depart from each other's company, they used to read Wal Asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. So this is like a sunnah of the Sahabas as well, that whenever we meet, for whichever gathering it is, on a social or even on an official meeting kind of a level, this is the thing that we need to remind us, that me and you are going to be in a loss except if we have these 4 things and we abide by its principles. So let us try and encourage this, and let me end off of today's lesson with the recital of Wal Asr once more. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr.